When COVID restrictions first kept office workers home more than 2 years ago, working in pajamas was something of a novelty. No longer. We asked David Pogue to help us decide, where do we go from here?
As the pandemic subsides, we're going back to flying, back to theaters, back to restaurants. But back to the office? Well, yes and no.
We believe the time is now to bring folks back into the office, to bring them together.
Ryan Williams is the founder and CEO of Cadre, a real estate investment firm in New York City. His employees are back in the office 3 days a week.
I do think that there's no replacement for in-person mentorship, training, guidance for younger employees in particular. I don't think you can replace that virtually. You don't get that serendipitous sort of brainstorming, talking about an idea, and then whiteboarding it virtually.
On the other hand,
we are fully remote and have decided that this is going to be our posture going forward. And we feel very strongly that it is simply the future of work for a lot of knowledge workers out there.
Jeremy Stoppelman is the CEO of Yelp, the business review service. As the pandemic ebbed, he gave his 4,400 workers the option of coming into the office. But
they didn't show up. It was something like 1% utilization in all these beautiful offices that we had set up.
And nobody came in?
Which makes sense. They save on commute, they have more flexibility in their day, they could spend more time with their family, have more time for activities.
Like a number of other big businesses, Yelp gave up most of its office space around the country. And that wasn't the only benefit to the bottom line.
What we've seen from our employees is productivity has sustained at least as good, if not better. And in fact, our revenue is now higher than it was pre-pandemic.
Here's where I get stuck. There are other companies, as you know, who have looked at the same data and drawn exactly the opposite conclusion. Everybody's got to come into the office.
Yeah, I mean, it's very confusing to me. We're suddenly able to tap into and hire employees in all 50 states, for example. In fact, we do now have employees in all 50 states. That was impossible in an environment where we were trying to get people into offices. In my mind, if you're not going remote or seriously thinking about it, you're missing out on one of the greatest free lunches in business.
Well, it's true. Remote workers get to live anywhere. They can adopt a more flexible schedule, and they get to avoid the commute, the office politics, and some of the childcare headaches. But it's also true that meeting at the office can be better for spontaneous collaboration and mentoring and building a corporate culture and cultivating a social life. Maybe that's why some companies have gone virtually all remote. Some companies require your full-time presence in person, and others request your presence a few days a week.
I think we're going through a phase where I would call it an experimental phase. There is no major in any MBA school that I'm aware of that has how do you have to change your culture, your recruiting strategy, your supply chain, all at the same time.
Steve Cadigan is a workplace consultant and author.
My advice right now is to really not make a decision for now and ever after. We are this. We are remote. We are going to be hybrid. I don't think you can, because you don't know how this is going to play out in 6 months. If you asked any executive search firm right now, when we call a candidate, the first question they ask is the job remote? The virus presented us, for the first time in history, a moment in time where everything was hit pause, and everyone stood back and looked at their reality from a different perspective. Gosh darn it, I love shopping on Tuesday and not having to elbow people at the grocery store every Saturday and Sunday.
How do we keep people productive, but then how do we keep them from not leaving? You know, with the great attrition, the great resignation, we're seeing a lot of talent leave the workforce in record numbers.
Brooke Weddle is a partner at McKinsey, the consultancy. She says that since the pandemic started, the balance of power between management and workers has radically changed.
40% of employees are considering leaving their work in the next 3 to 6 months. That is a hard figure to not take seriously as a CEO.
And that's not just service jobs like wait staff.
Across the board.
This conversation ultimately is about, are your workers happy?
Yeah, and what drives happiness? I mean, they want that belonging. They want to feel valued by their organization and their manager. I think employees are saying, look, we want something different and we want something more meaningful. And I don't see that going away anytime soon.
We're having this conversation about jobs that can be done at home or
Yeah.
hybrid. I mean, a nurse, a pilot, a bus driver, they're not going to have any of these options.
However, you can still create flexibility for those roles. You can still talk to a bus driver about her connection back to what an organization's purpose is.
Those efforts are underway. Already, 58% of American workers say they have the option to work from home for at least part of the week.
Here, you want the purple one?
AT&T Network Center technician Val Wilson isn't among them.
You made four. Hi.
In April, after she'd been working at home for 2 years, AT&T ordered her department back to the office 5 days a week.
My heart sunk. It's almost a slap in the face. Due to the reason we've been doing the job, it's been proven for those 2 years. You've patted us on the back for our productivity.
To make matters worse, Wilson says that AT&T consolidated 3 departments onto a single crowded floor of a new building.
We're all on edge, so to say. And then all it takes is for one person to cough or sneeze, and that anxiety kicks in again because you're like, where did it come from? So your office morale right now is none.
Do you think they'll lose some good talent with that approach?
We've already lost good talent. When we were forced back in, we've already lost some.
Are they in any danger of losing you if this situation doesn't get better?
I'm sorry, I get emotional when that comes up because I feel like I've done so much and put in so much to get to 30 years of service. And to make that decision to leave early, it's painful.
As a union steward, Wilson has proposed a hybrid plan to her bosses. She's hopeful that they'll allow working at home 2 days a week. AT&T told us, "We have been very clear that employees would not work from home indefinitely." In the meantime, Yelp CEO Jeremy Stoppelman concedes that the great shift to remote work might strike some traditionalists as radical.
It's a crazy idea. I totally get that. It's a huge transition. It's disruptive to the way that we've thought about the office for 100 plus years. You have a lot of employees that are doing their job simply at a computer every day. You could probably go remote, and it's going to be a win for everybody.